Good morning. I love the quote by Viktor Frankl, Holocaust survivor and psychiatrist. Between the stimulus and the response, there is a space. And in that space is our power to choose our response. So our power to choose our response. It's easier said than done, isn't it? Maybe one or two of you, your alarm clock didn't quite go off this morning. Or maybe you've been cut up on the way to here this morning. Or maybe you're on the way to a challenging meeting or had one yesterday and you're still thinking about it, or possibly a difficult customer. Or there's something on your mind about something that's happening over the next few days that is a little bit challenging. Maybe you didn't have the best night of sleep last night. Or worse still, maybe somebody's unliked you on Facebook. But the problem isn't the problem. The problem is our relationship towards our thoughts about the problem, because problems happen in life. It's a bit like this, really. Do you ever find, or is it just me, that your minds are sometimes a bit like this? You know, where there's a little bit of maybe impatience in there, a little bit of frustration, disappointment, a little bit of anger. And our minds can feel like this sometimes, like a bit of a whir. And this is where we can impulsively react as opposed to wisely and skillfully respond. But as we start to pause, then our minds start to settle and we become clearer and more rational and more able to make better decisions in how we respond. So my background is in leadership training, facilitating and coaching. And I've worked quite a lot with the National Health, and some of the doctors and consultants I work with tell me that at least 80% of their consultations are one way or another through stress-related illnesses. And I sort of related with that. About 10 years ago, I noticed I was starting to feel a little bit stressed, a little bit uncomfortable in situations that I hadn't been before. And somebody lent me a book called The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari. I don't know, has anybody read that? Yeah. Well, for me, it was quite life-changing. And it's about a guy who's really quite successful, but, he's got a lot of pressure. I think he's a barrister. He has a heart attack. And so he decides, right, okay, this is impacting my health, my mental health, my physical health. I'll go to the Himalayas and go and spend time with monks and sages and wise people. So fast forward a couple of months, and there we are, me and my husband, a white knuckle ride in India on the way to the Himalayas, and Dharamshala, where the Dalai Lama resides. We threw ourselves into meditation and this thing, mindfulness and yoga. And meditation was something I'd never done before, and I thought, quite frankly, it was for odd people or people who just got far too much time on their hands. And whilst we're there, oops, that way, isn't it? We ended up spending quite a lot of time with monks, and we stayed at a Tibetan institute with monks, and we sponsored a young girl. The young girl there is in pink, and she was about 7 or 8 years of age. Her name's Sangye. And this is her today. We go back quite frequently. We sponsored her education, and she's doing extremely well, top of her class, winning awards, and now speaking fluent English. I think our time with her and the monks, and spending time in a Tibetan village with Tibetan people taught us more about resilience, compassion, kindness, calmness, calming our minds, happiness, despite the fact that they have very little, and she has her whole entire life's possessions in a little box and lives with 39 other people in a very small house. So I became very interested in all this meditation stuff, and came back home, and I felt a real shift I'm not quite sure what happened, but I did feel different. And so carried on with a little bit of meditation and yoga and those sorts of things, and then came across in my reading a chap called John Kabat-Zinn, who's a professor at Massachusetts Hospital, and he was working with patients to help them with pain, so chronic pain and depression. And he took the teachings from the East, brought it over to the West, took out some of the religion, and actually he pioneered a program called Mindfulness-based stress reduction. He looked at it through a scientific lens, did lots and lots and lots of research, and the studies show that mindfulness, which I'll explain in a moment, really does impact positively on pain, depression, anxiety, worry, fear, those types of things. So with that in mind, I decided that I would embark on an MSc, considering I only got 2 O-levels at school and no other qualifications. I hadn't a clue, whether I was going to be able to do this or not, but embarked on an MSc in mindfulness-based stress reduction and compassion. And in my systematic review, having read hundreds and hundreds of papers on mindfulness and meditation and stress reduction, my systematic review was on the imposter syndrome. Whether anyone recognises that term, the imposter syndrome, where despite how well qualified we are or how experienced or successful we are, we still feel that we're going to be found out one day, And so the 4 components that I looked at was fear of failure, workaholism, procrastination, and perfectionism. And in each of those cases, mindfulness was proven to actually reduce the severity of it. So what is mindfulness? Well, maybe a way of explaining for those of you who don't know, and I'm sure many of you have heard about it, there's quite a hype on it at the moment. Let me take you back, for those of you who can remember Fawlty Towers, show me age, and that particular scene where Basil Fawlty is thrashing his Mini Cooper, in the street because it had broken down. Now you could say then Basil Fawlty was having an amygdala hijack. And the amygdala are 2 little sort of almond-shaped parts of the brain that set off the fight-flight response. And then our bodies are flooded with cortisol and adrenaline, and we really get quite hyped. And that's where our intelligence seems to go out the window, and we react. Now, if Basil had been mindful, he probably would have just stopped, noticed that he was getting agitated, paused for a breath, and taken stock and thought, okay, and this will take seconds. Right, this is the situation, what are my options, what can we do? But instead, he thrashes his car. When that happens, when our emotions get heightened, then it impairs something at the front called the prefrontal cortex. And that's the part of the brain that is responsible for clear thinking, rational thinking, decision-making, solution-making, emotion control, those sorts of things. So when we're really heightened emotionally, then I don't know whether you've noticed sometimes your brain just feels blank, or you forget the most obvious things, they just don't come to mind. So what is mindfulness? Well, noticing what's going on in our minds and body without getting caught up by our thoughts and emotions. So it's about noticing, those times when you are starting to feel anxious, worried, concerned, angry, happy, and really just stopping and pausing. And it might just be taking a breath. There's many other tools before we actually go down that route of our minds going in circles. Again, do you ever find that your mind just seems to take over, and then it starts to dramatize, and before we know it, we're in this big dramatized story of me and my. A study by Matthew Killingsworth, who's a Harvard, I think he was a Harvard professor. He did a study on what makes us happy, and he found out that 47% of the time we spent thinking about what's not happening and what isn't going on. And that comes at an emotional cost. And what he found out was that we are at our happiest when we're focusing on just one thing, even if it's something we're not particularly enjoying. But it's the fact that, we'll be doing one thing and our minds are on yesterday and what somebody said and why did they ignore me, and what this thing is I've got to do tomorrow or next week, or regrets, or, about things that you haven't done. So mindfulness is, a bit like going to the gym, really. It doesn't just, we don't just suddenly get lots of clarity and calm of mind by practicing mindfulness just the one time. It's the same as going to the gym. We wouldn't expect to come out with muscles and biceps, just from going the once. So I'm just going to go back a bit there. So again, mindfulness is about settling the mind. And it's about taking a breath, pausing, and there's two areas of mindfulness. The first one is the mindfulness meditation, and that's deliberately taking some time out, 10, 15 minutes a day, or it could be 5 minutes, it could be 5 minutes in the morning, 5 minutes in the evening, or it could be lots of 1 minutes. And that's formally training your brain. When you're noticing, you're getting distracted, you're going off on one, then what you're doing is you're training the brain to come back to a center of focus. And that repeatedly, that's all it is, repeatedly, as your mind goes off, you bring it back, you keep bringing it back. You think it's easy. I'm just going to ask you just to put your feet on the ground for a moment. And if you feel comfortable, just relax. For those of you who feel happy and comfortable to do it, just close your eyes for a moment if you prefer not to, just a soft gaze ahead. And then just take in a nice deep, slow, low breath in. And then exhale again, slowly, deeply. And see if you can exhale just that little bit longer than the inhale. And then just gently, when you're ready, just opening your eyes. And then when we're exhaling just that little bit longer than the inhale, what we're doing is we're calming down the parasympathetic nervous system. That helps to calm us, where it's the sympathetic nervous system that's triggered when we start to get nervous or agitated. So, are we too busy to do mindfulness? Well, the thing is, if we get anxious or worried or we're not having a good night's sleep, then that is impacting on our health, our mental well-being, but it's impacting on our effectiveness at work as well, because we haven't got a clear mind. We're not making probably the best decisions. The informal practice of mindfulness is simply, noticing moment-to-moment awareness. So, for example, how many of you have had a shower this morning? Not many of you. How many of you had a shower yesterday or last night? Not so grubby lot then. And another question, I know it sounds a bit personal, but how many people did you have in your shower with you? This one's bragging. Tenny says. So did you have your boss in there? Did you have your colleague in there? Did you have your neighbour? Yeah, all of those. Yeah, that person that said something a bit mean to you yesterday, or the person that didn't reply to your email, was she or he in there? And when you're eating your breakfast, if you have already eaten your breakfast, and watch it if you're going to eat your breakfast a little bit later on, are you actually tasting the breakfast? Are you noticing the food that you're eating, or is it shoveled in? Because that doesn't give your mind enough time to tell your stomach that it's actually full. And when you're actually speaking to somebody, take this morning, for example, were you listening or were you thinking about your response? So these are simple things, again, that we can start to practice: being in the moment, being aware of our emotions, pausing, and just taking a breath. So, we run weekly mindfulness sessions, meetings at Strays Coffee, Strays on Middlegate. This has been happening since October. I had no idea whatsoever whether Newark was ready for mindfulness, and it's going extremely well. I wanted to find somewhere that would have a warm, safe environment where people could come and relax, and a non-judgment sort of space where whether it's professionals, builders, women, men, singles, couples, friends, colleagues could come to a place where they could practice some periods of meditation, but also listen to a different topic each week. You'll see the leaflets that are put on the tables. The next series of meetings start on the 26th of June. They're £27 for five meetings. You can book online, or you can come to any individual one at just £7. Really warm environment, fantastic group of people, new people coming all the time. But what we're finding is now they're starting to see quite dramatic changes in their life. That's absolutely wonderful, especially, for the Newark community. The values around this program is community, so it's for the people of Newark and surrounding villages, connection, so it's connecting together with people, and compassion, that's about kindness, and gratitude. And then other things that we do, I don't know whether you can read that. We do lots of talks for local groups. We do a 3-day program that's coming up in October. That's where we absolutely immerse ourselves in the teachings, in the learnings. We do lots of practice, and we look at all sorts of areas where we can perhaps perform more effectively. So that's at work, but it's in life as well. That's the 23rd, 24th, 25th of October. We also do mindfulness retreats, again in and around Newark. And then we do mindful walks as well. They're for free. We did one a few weeks ago in Stapleford Woods. And somebody kept calling it something different from Stapleford Woods. It's, most worrying. I'll speak privately to people. You know what I mean. And so what I'm looking for is anyone that would like a talk in their organisation, an hour's talk, or a day or half a day, an introduction to mindfulness, or you'd like to come along to the Strays meetings, then please just get in touch with me or book online. The website is on the leaflets there. So I'm going to invite you then, as you go into your day, just, every time you notice you're getting a little bit agitated or, a little bit nervous, or start going into that whirring mind, chattering mind, just to stop and pause. It doesn't take long, but it really will make a difference if we start doing it more regularly, because that will help to start training your brain so that in a heightened moment or in a difficult meeting, instead of maybe saying that thing or sending the email that you then regret later, then it'll just train you to stop, and it'll go into your prefrontal cortex, which will help you to be a lot more rational, a lot more emotionally intelligent, and hopefully, provide you with a happier life and better well-being. So thank you very much indeed. Thank you.